Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads, they pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive. Yesterday, thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. We could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air, if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via a Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org, on the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV. to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives, or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. So far, we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. We've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out, in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now 877-378-8669 and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically 3 large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says Vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people. A great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you live daily, noon to 3 Eastern Time, 9 to noon Pacific, on non-commercial stations, Pacifica stations nationwide, on Sirius XM, all across the country, on YouTube, Facebook, Patreon, on cable and satellite TV via Free Speech TV, on Sling, on Roku, DirecTV, Dish TV, TuneIn, Alexa, podcasts on Apple, and on our website at thomhartmann.com. So glad to have you with us. There's a bunch of stuff that really needs to be highlighted. By the way, any day now or any minute now, Barack Obama is going to be giving a speech. We'll keep you up to date on what he has to say. But Kavanaugh, he has I mean, any other Supreme Court nominee in any other point in history, this would be the top of the news. This would be the above-the-fold headline on the New York Times. Birth control pills work by two mechanisms. Hormonal birth control, the stuff that was legalized in 1961. Now, the theory that was put forward in the 1960s, that was actually, this is what science believed, was that somehow they were preventing a fertilized egg from moving down the fallopian tube into the uterus and implanting. So fertilization had happened, and according to the Catholics, that's when life begins. Although the ovum couldn't implant, and therefore, basically you had a fertilized egg that was being expelled with a menstrual period. That was the theory. In the 70s, they figured out that that's not how it works. The way it works is that the hormonal birth controls do two things. Number one, they thicken the mucus in the cervix, which blocks. It's basically like putting a diaphragm in. It blocks the sperm from even getting into the uterus, much less up into the fallopian tubes, number one. And number two, if it does, they block ovulation. They prevent the ovaries from producing an egg that goes into the fallopian tubes to be available to the sperm. So they don't cause abortions, right? Even if you're arguing that an abortion is, expelling a fertilized egg. Well, apparently nobody told this to Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh appears to be still operating off the old science, which is still being promulgated in these crisis pregnancy centers and by, right-wingers and Christian fundamentalists, and some Catholics even, are still promoting this idea that hormonal birth control is actually an abortion pill, essentially. And here's what Kavanaugh had to say yesterday in response to questioning from Ted Cruz.
Another case you were involved in as a judge is you wrote a dissent from denial of rehearing en banc in the Priest for Life case. Mm-hmm. Can you tell this committee about that case and your opinion there?
That was a group that was being forced to provide certain kind of health coverage over their religious objections.
This was health coverage that included birth control pills.
Under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the question was, first, was this a substantial burden on the religious exercise? And it seemed to me quite clearly it was. It was a technical matter of filling out a form in that case, but that they said filling out the form would make them complicit in the provision of the abortion-inducing drugs that they were, as a religious matter, objected to.
You get this? The abortion-inducing drugs. These were birth control pills. They did not want their insurance company to pay for birth control pills. That's what we're talking about here. This is bizarre. This guy, you think Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned, when Kavanaugh gets on the bench? It'll happen the first day. In addition, we've got, this long list of Kavanaugh's lies. I mean, there's this absolute promotion, first of all, of Brett Kavanaugh. Sinclair stations have now produced, this according to MediaMatters.org, 6 must-run segments pushing Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. 6 of them. And so people watching Sinclair stations are getting these sales pitches for Kavanaugh's nomination. And this is, and then we get to well, he lied about abortion, obviously. I mean, I think yesterday that was his flag. That was his way of saying to the fundamentalists, yeah, forget about Roe v. Wade. Forget about abortion. I'm going to go with the guys who want to outlaw birth control pills, was essentially what Brett Kavanaugh was saying yesterday. But in addition, Joan McCarter, writing over in the Daily Kos, Brett Kavanaugh lied under oath to Congress in 2004 and 2006. And Pat Leahy has documented those lies, and Dianne Feinstein has documented those lies. The first one is in 2004. He told Ted Kennedy that he wasn't involved in handling Bill Pryor's nomination when he worked for George W. Bush. Bill Pryor was, a court nominee, a federal judge. And the reason Bill Pryor was a big deal was Bill Pryor explicitly said, Roe v. Wade, I'm quoting, Roe v. Wade was the worst abomination in the history of constitutional law. And so Kavanaugh's now denying that he had anything to do with trying to get Bill Pryor on the federal bench. And in fact, we've got, Leahy lays out actual emails where he's talking about it. It was a June 2003 email inviting Kavanaugh to attend an emergency umbrella meeting at a private law firm to, quote, discuss nominee Bill Pryor's hearing. He told Pat Leahy yesterday that he had nothing to do with the stolen emails, stolen from Pat Leahy himself, stolen from the Senate Judiciary Committee, and given to Republicans about the Democrats' strategy, their strategy around, what they were going to do with, judge nominations. And it turns out he was very involved in that. Public emails show that he was lying under oath when he told Leahy in 2006 that he didn't know about illegal warrantless wiretapping. We now have an email from Kavanaugh to John Yoo, dated September 17, 2001, asking, quote, any results yet on the Fourth Amendment implications of random constant surveillance of phone and email conversations of non-citizens who are in the United States when the purpose of the surveillance is to prevent terrorism and criminal violence? How's that warrantless wiretapping going, basically, is what he said. Oh, no, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't even know what was going on. I read about it in the New York Times. No, you lied. Dick Durbin yesterday said that there are at least 3 specific examples in which Kavanaugh participated in discussions about the Bush administration's detainee and torture policy. And again, yesterday he said, oh, I didn't know. In 2006, Kavanaugh denied under oath that he'd been involved in that policy making. And then finally, Louise Mensch tweeted this a couple days ago, and I retweeted it, and then somebody said, oh, why are you retweeting Louise Mensch? So I pulled it. And found, another similar one to retweet. I should have just written one myself. But the question, Kavanaugh had $200,000 in credit card debt last year. This year, he doesn't. What the hell's going on? Who paid off his credit card debt, number one? And number two, how did he run up that kind of debt? It looks like a lot of it was buying baseball tickets. Baseball tickets? Was this a way of paying off a gambling debt? We don't know. And nobody asked. Okay. Meanwhile, you want to pick it up?
Just letting you know we have it.
Okay. Meanwhile, the Trump administration announced their intention Thursday to lift court-ordered limits on how long migrant children could be detained. The Trump administration wants to create a Gitmo for children, permanent or indefinite detention. Right now, the law says that you can't detain a child for more than 21 days in a detention facility, in a prison. You have to get them into a foster home or in with a family or something within 21 days. And the Trump administration is saying, no, we want to be able to hold them indefinitely. Over at Common Dreams, you can read this article. Gitmo for children. Trump administration reveals plans to imprison families with kids indefinitely, and there's some discussion about this. I want to get into a conversation too about the op-ed yesterday, and is that person a collaborator or a patriot? We had this conversation yesterday. I'd like to continue it. And of course, it's Anything Goes Friday. So whatever you want to talk about, we will pick up your calls as soon as we come back from this break. It's 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. 15 and a half minutes past the hour. And we'll be back with Anything Goes Friday. We'll be keeping you up to date on what President Obama has to say. And, of course, Trump last night was in Montana making the OK signal every time he answered a question. Maybe he just does that. I'm guessing. I don't think Cambridge Analytica sat him down and said, do this when you're campaigning. I doubt it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Or did they? What do you think? We'll be back at 16 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Oh, and let's see, who is calling on Free Speech TV? Here we go. Keno in Lakeland, Florida. Hey, Keno, what's on your mind today?
Good morning. Well, I want the world to know there's a group of us Republicans organizing to retire Uncle Donnie.
Oh, really?
And we want America to get behind Mike Pence Now, he sent a little flag. He waved a little flag out the door for the public and says, we've been whispering inside here about, invoking the 25th. Will America be behind us? Let's all of America tell Mike Pence, invoke the 25th as soon as possible and give us a Christmas present for America.
Okay, so you're a Republican, and you're fine with Pence, and you're not fine with Trump. Why? What's different between the two?
Mental state, can we say? Age, mental state. Uncle Donnie needs to be, Ivanka needs to take one hand, and Melania needs to take the other hand, and they need to walk him into retirement in some green pasture somewhere and let him, he did a big thing by be elected president, but it's time for him to retire now, and Ivanka and Melania are going to help us, and that means America's got to support Mike Pence.
Yeah.
And pray for him, and we got to have a plan. And there's the moose herders agenda now. That's us Republicans that want, in honor of Teddy Roosevelt. And the moose herders agenda is that as soon as possible, Mike Pence invoke the 25th, and he pull in John Huntsman to be his vice president.
Now, Teddy Roosevelt created much of our public lands. Mike Pence wants to privatize them. Teddy,
let me tell you the story on Mike Pence.
Sure.
He thinks he's a gelding. He thinks his ball's been cut off, but he's actually a rig, we call in the Hearst world. He's got some balls up inside of him, and if he'll quit getting over his fear of homosexuals, he can let his testicles show.
Okay, that was not what I was speaking of. I understand your metaphors, but my point was, if you think you're a Teddy Roosevelt Republican, Teddy Roosevelt actually proposed a livable wage, higher than a minimum wage. Go back and read his square deal speeches. He wanted health care for all Americans. He wanted a strong Social Security system 20 years before Social Security was invented. Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive. Are you saying that there are progressive Republicans still in the party?
Well, they're going to be converted to progressives as the events unfold.
I thought that I saw Donald Trump last night in his speech in Montana say that the Democrats want to destroy Social Security and Medicare. I'm sure that you know that the Democrats brought us Social Security and Medicare and have fought to defend it at every turn, and it's always been Republicans opposed to it.
We're in agreement that Uncle Donnie's not thinking straight, and he's got to be put in retirement.
Okay, so do you agree with
him because he's not thinking straight?
I get it. I get it. I get it. I think that's great, and I would love to know, how widespread this is in the Republican world. But my other question is, do you agree with Mike Pence that Social Security should be handed over to the banks and Medicare should be handed over to United Healthcare and other big insurance companies?
Now, here's continued the metaphor and the parable and the fable. If Mike Pence doesn't do what's right, he's going to end up being a gelding.
So you're saying, okay.
We're going to, we Republicans that are for Mike Pence are going to join in with the Democrats. And Mike Pence is going to get Joe Biden and Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper to be special counselors after he appoints John Huntsman as vice president, and it's going to be a bipartisan administration.
Very, very interesting. Kino, we'll see what happens. I'm skeptical, but we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is Anything Goes Friday. We just had a caller saying that he's part of a group of Republicans down in Florida who are working to get Mike Pence to initiate a 25th Amendment action against Donald Trump to remove him from office so that that good, godly man, Mike Pence, can take office and run the country appropriately. That was breathtaking. Ronald in Tallahassee, Florida. Hey, Ronald, what's up?
Well, I had another subject, but I'll get in it in a minute. Mike Pence is another guy like Kavanaugh, and I liken them to the Stepford Wives. People know the Stepford Wives movies? Yeah,
I never saw the movie, but I understand that it's about people who just kind of go along with what's going on.
And also this recent movie, Get Out, which this black guy was invited to these kind of white upper middle class country club type house. In other words, I'm the guy who called a few weeks ago and I like it. I like Trump in that he's fighting the CIA and the FBI. Remember, you might not remember, but and I always say Trump has killed fewer people than the CIA or the FBI. So I like him with that. And they're the one. I know there's a lot of people that don't like Trump and are trying to take him down, but they're the ones leading the charge. But let me say something about Kavanaugh, if I could, because I
well, hang on just a second. Do you think that we should not have a national spy service or a national police force for crimes that cross state lines?
I do.
Why?
Well, not a national police force.
I do. Do you mean you do think that we should not, or you do think that we should?
I think we should have a national police force, but not a national spy force, because in a democracy, almost everything America does is readily available to anyone.
Up until the Patriot Act, the CIA was very, very narrowly circumscribed. They could not do anything inside the United States. I'm all in favor of returning to that doctrine, but I don't think that we should do away with our spy agencies.
Well,
okay, that's a debate for another time, Ronald, and it's not a realistic debate because nothing like that's going to happen. You want to talk about Kavanaugh?
Kavanaugh, I just noticed if he was a judge in a courtroom and somebody tried to filibuster like he filibusters, he'd shut them up immediately. Democrats have been too polite talking to him.
I agree.
They'd ask him a question and he would not answer. He'd go all around and he'd say, "Well, I want you to understand. I want you."
Well, they have pointed out on a couple of occasions that he's filibustering. So, I said I agree that they've been too polite. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. Cory Booker standing up to Grassley yesterday was a thing to behold, and then all the other members of the committee, jumping on board and saying, "Yeah." But
it's like basketball or in the schoolyard. The bully Grassley, he pretends to be this nice old guy, but people seeing his true meanness and his curmudgeoniness. I don't know what the word is. It's very interesting, and Trump is just too. Pence. Oh my God! If Pence were president, church would be mandatory.
Yeah, get ready for smarmy, and we would be back to the law that Pence championed in Indiana, that if a woman has a miscarriage, that she must have a funeral. I mean, it's bizarre. Ronald, thank you for the call. I share your concerns. I very much do. Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, Norma, what's up? Thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV.
I wanted to call and discuss Kavanaugh because I agree with you that Kavanaugh would put an end to all forms of birth control. And I grew up under this here in Montgomery, Alabama, under a misogynistic man who told me repeatedly as a child that because I was a girl, I did not need to go to school, that I would just grow up, get married, and have babies, and that's the only purpose in my life. And growing up here in the South, watching the civil rights movement, I think that if Kavanaugh is on the bench, the only people in this country who will have any rights within 5 years will be only rich white men, that no one else in this country will matter. And I want to ask everybody to please call the Senate and talk to them, whether they're yours or not, because we were born free and we have a right to live free.
At 202-224-3121 is the number for the switchboard for the U.S. Senate if you would like to register your opinion with your senator, and particularly call Murkowski and Collins.
And I've been calling Highcamps is 202-224-2043.
Right, or you can get to her through the switchboard at 224-3121, because that reaches every single senator. And Norma, the point that you're making, I think, ties into my original rant from, I think it was Tuesday, about where all this stuff is going and where it's come from.
Can't you see a new constitution coming and that we do not have the right to do anything?
And how dangerous it is when the Supreme Court is out of step with the American public, as happened with the Dred Scott decision. This is when, in a small way that happened with Brown v. Board of Education, but they weren't out of step with America. They were out of step with Virginia. Virginia shut down their public schools in response to Brown v. Board.
Remember George Wallace standing in the door of the University of Alabama?
Yes. Segregation now, segregation forever. Yes.
Yes. And I think that if Kavanaugh is confirmed, and we have five judges who can do whatever they want, the way the Senate and the House are doing whatever they want now, democracy in the United States is done. and we will lose the right to, I can remember when you could practically, if I walked down the street and spoke to a black person, I would be chastised, and I almost got fired when I hired black people.
Wow.
When I hired black people privately to work for me when I was raising horses, I had the white men in the neighborhood come yell at me and also tell me I was paying them too much to build a barn.
Wow, that's amazing. Norma.
Back to that.
Norma, thank you for sharing your stories with us. I always appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. It's 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive yesterday. Thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. We could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air, if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via a Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org. On the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives. Or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. So far, we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. We've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out, in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now 877-378-8669 and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, But by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically 3 large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people, a great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically little office suite in Portland, Oregon, creating a mini television studio in an office and making it work and getting the show out to you. And I think it's a lot of fun to pull the curtain back. So call now, 877-378-8669. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. President Obama is giving a barn burner of a speech right now, and I'm going to go to that speech so you can hear what he has to say. We'll pick that up for the next few minutes, and then we'll get back to your calls. Here he is.
Neither party has been exclusively responsible for us going backwards instead of forwards. But I have to say this, because sometimes we hear, oh, a plague on both your houses. Over the past few decades, wasn't true when Jim Edgar was a governor here in Illinois, or Jim Thompson was governor. Got a lot of good Republican friends here in Illinois. But over the past few decades, the politics of division and resentment and paranoia has unfortunately found a home in the Republican Party.
The show, and so I have some doubts about whether we have the right to actually carry that video live. So we will be chopping this thing up. The speech that he gave earlier in the speech, he said, Trump is out there talking about how wonderful the economy. He never mentioned Trump, but he says, when you hear about how great the economy is, don't forget when that recovery started. And of course, everybody was applauding. And he's laying out essentially the stuff that we talk about every day on this program, and how bizarre and corrupt this administration is. And what a great job in many regards he did, even in the face of massive Republican opposition in the 8 years that he was president. So back to your calls. Anything goes Friday here. Jesse in Miami, Florida. Hey, Jesse, what's up?
Hey, hi, Tom. Hey, I was looking at the big picture as always. The First Amendment, we got this guy, up for nomination for the Supreme Court. What do you think would happen if somebody was to challenge capitalism as being a violation of the First Amendment?
How?
Well, the First Amendment says we are all equal. Capitalism between the employer and employee, that relationship don't exist.
Well, the statement of equality is not in the Constitution, Jesse. It's in the Declaration of Independence, which is not a legal document any longer. It was arguably a legal document up until the time of the end of the Revolutionary War, but it no longer is. I agree it's part of our history, and it's part of our mythology, it's part of our cultural perspective, our political, it's at the core of our political philosophy. It's at the core of the Enlightenment.
So what does the First Amendment say?
The First Amendment guarantees the right of a free press. It guarantees your right to exercise your religion without interference from the government. It guarantees your right to assemble peaceably and petition for redress of grievances, which is the language that they use basically to protest against your government.
Well, that would violate the free speech thing, because how can you have free speech and you have to pay for it?
Well, then that's an issue that comes up a lot, and broadly speaking and in theory, you're right. I mean, you would say to your employer, how dare you say that I can't, for example, these non-disclosure agreements right now that Trump is having people sign where they can't go on television and speak ill of Donald Trump or they have to pay $1 million. You could say, hey, that's a violation of my free speech. In government, if you work in government, yeah, government can't do that. And I don't know how Trump is doing this. And in fact, there are substantial questions about whether it's even legal that he's asking people to sign non-disclosure agreements, although he did threaten to sue Omarosa for $1 million just last week. But the courts have repeatedly ruled that in a private business, that the First Amendment only protects you from interference in your speech by government. And so if the body, the agency that is denying you free speech is your employer, then the First Amendment doesn't protect you. Jesse, great try. And I love the way your mind works. I just don't think that that's going to be the compelling argument that we need, although it may be a great start. John in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Thom Hartmann? I'll be quick. First off, I listen to you all the time because when they do the rebroadcast, I listen to it. Glad to see you on in the morning time.
Thank you.
This Kavanaugh dude, he's very bad news for one.
Yeah.
And me being a black man, as bad as I'm already disenfranchised, this just makes it a lot worse. That's one thing I wanted to bring up. One other quick thing I wanted to bring up.
If I can just add to that, John, before you continue. Twice, and I saw this on a couple of programs last night. I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me. I should have dug it up. But twice in the recent past, Kavanaugh has written about things like affirmative action programs being, quote, naked race-based quotas. And that's the kind of language that you expect from Pat Buchanan. Back to you.
I don't even think Pat Buchanan would be that kind of.
No, he's more sophisticated than that these days. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're right.
That's actually disgusting language right there.
Yeah.
And another thing is, while everyone is worried about Roe versus Wade, even though, I mean, me personally, I know the whole history of that, which actually goes all the way back to towards the end, at the end of World War II. There's a whole lot that has to deal with that. So I'm kind of uncomfortable with that for, extermination reasons. But other than that, this guy here, he's a virtual nightmare, and there is no real way to stop him.
Well, the way to stop him is for everybody to call 202-224-3121 and ask for each of their two senators, one after the other, and say to them explicitly, vote no on Kavanaugh. This guy should not be on the Supreme Court.
Are all Democrats, though. So
call them too. I mean, they need to know that people are out there behind them. They need to know that there's a movement, that there's a wave. I'm totally with you. John, thank you for the call. It's a great start to the conversation. Christopher in Vancouver, Washington. Hey, Christopher. Kavanaugh?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call, Tom.
Sure.
Yeah, and thanks for all that you do, and welcome back to Portland.
My pleasure. Thank you, Christopher. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was wondering, if Kavanaugh is is seated on the Supreme Court, could he be prosecuted for perjury?
No, he could be impeached for perjury. But it's extremely unlikely. The last time an impeachment happened of a Supreme Court justice was back in 1804 or 6 or 8 or something like that, the first decade of the 1800s, and they did not get a conviction in the Senate. You have to, I mean, in the House you can impeach pretty much any federal official, from the president to the Supreme Court to others. You can impeach with a majority vote in the House, but that doesn't remove them from office. That requires a trial in the Senate, and then that requires a 2/3 vote of the Senate. So I'm thinking, I was watching Kavanaugh yesterday when Kamala Harris was grilling him about whether basically he was coordinating with the Trump administration and saying to Kasowitz, Trump's lawyer, or his people in his law firm. Apparently, a guy named McManus is an old friend of his who works for Kasowitz. Kasowitz, of course, was Trump's lawyer in the Mueller investigation. And whether he's having a conversation with Kasowitz's people saying, "Put me on the Supreme Court, and I'll protect Donald Trump." And she was asking him that question, and you could just see the gears. In fact, we played the video and audio of it yesterday on the program. You could just see the gears in his head turning. Okay, if I lie, if I tell the truth, I'm sunk. I won't be on the Supreme Court, and I might even lose my federal judgeship on the D.C. Circuit. On the other hand, if I lie, yes, it's a crime. But who's going to prosecute me? I mean, John Roberts lied in his confirmation hearings. We know that. Clarence Thomas lied in his confirmation hearings. We know that now, too. There's never been any penalty for these guys. And so you could just see the gears turning in his head as he was pausing and pausing and pausing, and then finally just thought, oh, what the hell? No, I didn't have any conversation like that. Like, I dare you. And, that's what I think is going on. So, unfortunately, no, you can't prosecute him for perjury. You can impeach him, but it's gonna take a lot. Christopher, thank you for the call.
Thanks, Tom.
I do appreciate it. Roderick in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Roderick, what's up?
Hi, Tom. First off, in response to the pro-Pence caller, I don't think he's going to get much done. I think
Pence or the caller?
Hypothetically, with the president, Mike Pence, I think it's going to be the last 2 years of the George W. Bush administration, in which I think he's going to keep his distance from the media and pretty much be in damage control in the remaining years of Trump's first term.
We'll see. I mean, his demeanor indicates that he will be a Jerry Ford kind of president. A nice bubbling guy who just kind of doesn't do too much damage. But if you look at his policies, Mike Pence, from the time he was a right-wing talk show host, through his time in the House, through his time as governor, he championed legislation forcing women who have miscarriages to essentially report themselves to the police and have funerals and hang on to whatever came out of them, fish it out of the toilet or whatever. He championed the privatization of Social Security. He championed the end of Medicare, blocking Medicaid. This guy is a hardcore right-winger, and I think he's more dangerous than Donald Trump in many regards, because Donald Trump doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And Mike Pence, who is he owes his career to the Koch brothers, knows exactly what he's doing. And that makes him, in my opinion, much more dangerous.
Very true. But in regards to my main point, in regards to the Kavanaugh situation going on in D.C. right now, I think Kavanaugh is just a good example of us desperately needing another counterculture as we did back in the 1960s. And I know, Tom, you know all about this.
I think it's emerging right now, Roderick. I think that you're seeing it under the rubric of resistance, under the rubric of Black Lives Matter, and under the broader rubric of the millennial generation.
Yes. The problem I have is one of the biggest things I got from the studying about the 1960s in school and the counterculture we had, and was the anti-war movement. My question is, where's the anti-war movement for the situation in the Middle East right now?
The issue when you're planning activism, in my opinion, and particularly even when I'm thinking about the positions I'm taking on this program and the battles I'm willing to fight, the hills I'm willing to die on, is that there is a difference between winning wars and winning battles, to use a military metaphor, as much as I'm I have a lot of discomfort with that. I don't know of a better way to explain this really quickly. And that is that some people seem very, very caught up in winning every battle. But they very often lose the war as a consequence of that. And they find themselves fighting a whole lot of small battles that just, waste their energy, burn through their energy, and they end up losing the war. I'm perfectly willing to lose a few battles here and there to win the larger war. And I think we have to keep the larger issues in mind. What kind of a society do we want? What kind of country is this? What are our core values? Who really are we? What does it mean to become a social democracy? Or to even be one? I mean, I'd say we have been one since the FDR administration. What does this, how do you get there? How is it that every country in the world can have free education, free college education, free all education to their kids, and free health care, and we can't? What is different about us? Are we just the world's suckers? I think that as the extent to which every single battle we pick, we put it in the context of this larger war, and is really important. And that's why I think even the discussions about Brett Kavanaugh need to be held in the context of our value system rather than just, these little individual points. Am I making sense here, Roderick?
Oh, yeah, you're making a lot of sense, Tom.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Taking your calls for the entire show. It's coming up on, 12 minutes before the hour, 48 minutes past. Helping you win the water cooler wars, the place where despair is not an option. We'll be back. I'll keep you up to date on what President Obama is saying, and we'll be picking up more of your calls right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the program where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person? And we dare to say, no way. What are you, crazy? We'll be back. And welcome back. Cheryl in Santa Barbara, California, listening to us on KPFK. Hey, Cheryl, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Yes, I called in because I hear the left, not just you, but Democracy Now! And other programs, it feels like constantly putting down, I feel like, the white middle class, and constantly talking about how the Democrats are on our side. I live in Santa Barbara, California. I was raised poor in Detroit, lifted myself out of the social class for where I was born, had a child out of wedlock, did not abort my child, and as a result of owning a home and working hard, I have had my life and my career destroyed by a corrupt judicial system. I've written books. I have a short story called "The Courts Are Taking Away Your Second Amendment Rights." And I've written other books describing things that have happened to me as a result of fighting to keep my home against known mortgage fraud. And I never get heard. Nobody, you say, tag, you're it. I write books. I try to call in. I try to talk. I am never heard. I hear about illegal immigration all the time, but my voice is never heard. I have women. I have a woman mayor, Hispanic. I have a female police chief. I have a female district attorney. Dianne Feinstein's my senator. I have women all around me.
This is Kamala Harris.
85% of the women who lost their homes in Santa Barbara County to foreclosure were older, white, middle-class women. None of my women representatives have ever, including Hannah Beth Jackson, ever listened to my concerns. Ever. Not even once. I am no
Cheryl,
longer
you're
a
speaking.
Democrat.
I assume that you're speaking.
Cheryl,
I got it. I assume that you're speaking of yourself and not of white middle class women broadly, because if you turn on women and men, but if you turn on the TV, most of what you're going to see is white middle class people. There's certainly no shortage of white middle class women on TV and radio, in print, in positions of power. They may not be listening to you, Cheryl, But America is basically, I mean, it was 53% of white women is what put Donald Trump in the White House.
TV is not representing us women right now, in California anyways, and in Santa Barbara. Our district attorney has beaten up so many white middle-class women. It's not just me. I'm the only one speaking out. 85% of the people who lost their homes in Santa Barbara County were women. The DA has prosecuted at least 4 of those women for doing minor things to try to keep their home. You go into our jail right now in County Santa Barbara, it's all white women. I know. I just spent a day
Well, that's because Santa Barbara's mostly white, Cheryl.
No, it isn't. Minority, it's Hispanic. I don't know where you're getting your facts, but the majority of people in Santa Barbara are Hispanics, and the majority of the women and the politicians who are in power, and I am not anti-Semitic, but they are all
They're all Jewish? Oh, God. Okay, Cheryl, thank you. And good luck with your book on the Second Amendment. We'll be back. It's 52 minutes past the hour. Say what? Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's Anything Goes Friday. Richard in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. What I'm wondering is, so if Kavanaugh actually does get onto the bench, what's this country going to look like when, there's 5 very conservative, reactionary justices, and the country wants changes, such as health care, protection of the environment, that kind of thing. And, so you could have 95% of the people want gun regulation. They won't allow that to happen. What is this going to look like? So
this was my opening rant. I believe it was Tuesday, maybe it was Friday of last week. That when the Supreme Court is out of step with the people, you have an explosive combination. The last time we saw this was the era from 1933 until 1937. And during that time, Franklin Roosevelt kept passing law after law after law, and the Supreme Court kept striking them down. And this was the end of the Lochner era court. And for example, the National Industrial Recovery Act, also known as the NRA, the National Recovery Act, it provided for a minimum wage. It provided for an absolute right to unionization. It provided for maximum work hours. And it provided venue for workers to have a place where they could challenge their employers without fear of punishment. The Supreme Court struck down all of those provisions. In fact, I believe they struck down the entire NRA. It might have been just most of it. And as a violation of the individual right to contract between employees and employers. And this created an explosion. I mean, they struck down a good chunk of the New Deal. This was in 1935 that they struck this down. And late 1935 and into early 1936, this was going on. And then in 36, it was an election year, and FDR started campaigning on this. And so the Supreme Court put on their docket to hear arguments in late 36 that they were going to hear arguments on the constitutionality of Social Security and the constitutionality of there was another piece to it. It might have been the WPA. I forget which part of it, but it was two major issues that FDR had. And that was when he started talking about he was going to pack the court. And in 1937, after he was sworn in, he won the election in 36 in a landslide. And in 37, I believe he had the votes to do it. You can read about this in the book about Frances Perkins's being the first labor secretary, the woman who wrote the New Deal, I think is the title of the book. But it's all right there. And the court backed down from FDR's pressure. But in the 1860, the court did not back down. Roger Taney said, Tawney said that slaves are the property of their owners. Period. Full stop. Anywhere in the country. Abraham Lincoln said, "I'm not going to enforce your decision." So it's a prescription for disaster, basically, Richard. Thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
From UN.
Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive. Yesterday, thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. We could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air, if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org, on the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives. Or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. So far, we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. We've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out, in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now, 877-378-8669, and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically 3 large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people, a great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically little office suite in Portland, Oregon, creating a mini television studio in an office and making it work and getting the show out to you. And I think that, it's a lot of fun to pull the curtain back. So call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Became people.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. President Obama is, in his speech, was just talking about how only 1 in 5 young people voted in the last national election. 1 in 5. I'm not sure exactly what he's defining as young people, but I'm guessing, under 25. 1 out of 5. And he says, he has won elections where, he won by 5 votes or 20 votes in precinct after precinct after precinct across the state and ended up as a consequence of that winning the entire state. That your vote does matter, and it really does. It's really an important point. It's Anything Goes Friday. Picking up your phone calls here, Nader in San Rafael, California. Hey, Nader, what's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. Thank you so much for your program. I really appreciate your thoughts. I just wanted to mention, because of Obama talking about the economy and the recovery and all of that, that the economy doing supposedly as well as it's doing, it is going to really carry Trump. If we continue to do well, it's going to carry Trump into a second term, because that's what all his supporters, well, the ones who are not openly racist and all of that, but the ones that actually can have a dialogue, that's what they talk about, that he's doing well, the economy is doing well, companies are doing great, people are hiring. So what is that, in your opinion, all about? Because if he doesn't know what he's doing, which seems to be very clear, what is going on with the economy? And yes, maybe it did start with Obama, and we're continuing that recovery. But the net result of this is that Trump supporters are taking the credit. And he is really going, in his talk last night, I don't know where it was one of these
Montana
rallies again, where, all his supporters are cheering, and clearly, they just are selected as his supporters who, listen to Fox News. They may have a very shallow understanding of what's actually happening to this country.
Yeah, these are campaign events. The only people that they allow in are people who've donated to his campaign. Here's what I think is going on, Nader. Let me just cut right to the chase. The Republican Party has made a deal with the devil here. They want to get control of the Supreme Court. This has been the holy grail of the Koch brothers, the right-wing billionaires, corporate America, the Chamber of Commerce. This has been their holy grail since the 60s and 70s. And they took a huge step forward when Nixon put Lewis Powell on the court in 72, and then Powell ruled in Buckley versus Vallejo in 76 that money equals speech and billionaires can own politicians. And then that followed up with First National Bank versus Bilotti, et cetera. You know that history. They have not succeeded in having a solid and predictable 5-vote majority that is totally conservative on this court. They've been close. I mean, they had 5 votes for Bush v. Gore. They've had, there've been a lot of 5-4 decisions where Kennedy was the swing vote. But since Roberts was on the court, there have been 51 major policy decisions where Roberts voted with the other 3 conservatives. They had 4 on the conservative side. And Kennedy, the swing vote, voted with the liberals. And so thus we got, for example, national gay marriage. We got upholding Roe v. Wade. We got upholding some workplace protections. I mean, there's a number of things, 51 times just in the last few years where these guys have split. If you replace Roberts with somebody who is ideologically similar to or to the right of, if you replace Kennedy with somebody who is ideologically similar or to the right of Roberts or Thomas or Alito, then what you're going to end up with is a court that is reliably and consistently going to vote in favor of corporations, in favor of churches, in favor of basically, fascist ideology, the merger of corporate and state interests. And that's who Kavanaugh is. And so the Republicans looking at this said, okay, the big goal here is the Supreme Court. This is the most important thing. We've been trying to do this forever. We got sabotaged by Souter. We got sabotaged by Kennedy. We've had a bunch of Republican appointees. Even Sandra Day O'Connor was not the conservative we thought she was. We encouraged her to leave the court. We've always had these problems. We need to get this reliable court. So how do we do it? Okay, Trump is president. We're going to make Trump president, right? We're going to throw everything we can into that. And that's why Mitch McConnell was willing to take this huge political gamble of blocking Merrick Garland for a whole year and destroying the reputation of not only the Senate, but of Mitch McConnell. He was willing to do this because they were pretty sure that with the voter suppression, particularly in the Midwest, that they would be able to get Trump into office. And they were right. I mean, there was obviously a big bet that he made, but it paid off. And I don't think he would have made the bet if he didn't think that there was a better than 50% chance of it paying off. Number one. Number two, They knew once Trump came into office that the only way that they would be able to, hold on to that office is if they could goose the economy. There was so much crazy stuff that these guys are doing. They're selling off our public lands. They're destroying the Affordable Care Act. They're trying to privatize Social Security. They're trying to do away with Medicare. They're still fighting Medicaid expansion in the states. They're suppressing votes all over the country, and people are getting wise to it. There's so much awful stuff. They're promoting misogynistic laws, anti-abortion stuff. There's so much of this horrible stuff going on. They said, we've got to have something that is going to basically blind the American people and cause them to support Trump. If you look back on all the races in the last 100 years where an incumbent Republican president was running for re-election, which gives you an indication of how this works, the times that they won, Republican or Democrat, the times that they won were when the economy was really on a roll in the 6 months leading up to the election. The times that they lost was when the economy was in the tank in the 6 months leading up to the election. So they're sitting around going, okay, if we're going to get our Supreme Court nominee, if we're going to get what we want done, if we're going to continue to deregulate industry, if we're going to continue to privatize public lands, and if we're going to have a launching pad for the larger issue effort to privatize Social Security and destroy Medicare, we have to have a high level of popularity for the Republicans and for the president. We have to hang on to the Senate at the very least in the midterm elections and the congressional elections of 2018. So how do we do that? We pour money into the economy. We pour borrowed money into the economy. Now, there are some people in the Republican Party who said, hey, wait a minute, you're going to borrow $1.5 trillion and pour that into the economy in the form of tax breaks for billionaires and big corporations. Yes, of course, that's going to stimulate the economy. This is what I was saying back in the 80s when Reagan did the same thing. Everybody was like, oh, look at how wonderful the economy is under Reagan. And I was like, yeah, you give me $1 trillion credit card, I can show you what it looks like to live large, but the bill will come due. And there are Republicans, David Frum, David Stockman, people out there saying, hey, wait a minute, you put $1.5 trillion on the national credit card. That is a prescription for disaster. And the Republicans said, yeah, sure, it absolutely is. And we're going to do everything we can to hold that disaster off until a Democrat is in office, which will probably be 2020. So the bet that they're making right now is that they can hold off the crash until 2020. This was the bet, by the way, that they were making in 2004. In that election, was that they could hold off leading up to the 2008 election. They knew how fragile the economy was in the 2000s, in that first decade of the 2000s. They knew it. And they continued, and this is why Bush had these repeated tax cuts and why he was radically amping up military spending in Iraq and Afghanistan. They knew that if they poured money into the economy, they could postpone the crash. And they almost did it. If Bush had just been able to get 8 more months, the crash would have happened like the week that Obama won the election, which would have been perfect from the Republicans' point of view. And that they're playing that same game and making that same bet right now. And they're playing with fire.
How do we deal with that, though? Because it looks to me, a nightmare is that Trump may pull this off. And the crash may not come by 2020.
I agree, and this is why they're talking about making the tax cuts, more long term for the billionaire class, and pour more money into the economy. And it's why Trump gets all upset when the Fed talks about dialing back the economy. And now the Fed has walked back, by the way, this talk. Trump, they were saying, well, we're going to raise interest rates at least 3 times this year, and then Trump goes off on it because he knows that raising interest rates is going to slow down the economy. And so now the Fed is going, well, maybe a recession is coming. The indicators are all there, so we're going to be a little more cautious. I smell a rat, Nader, and I've laid it out. I think the most important thing we can do about all this is educate everybody as to what exactly is going on. And I realize it took me like 4 minutes to go through all that stuff, which means it doesn't boil down to a bumper sticker really well, unless your bumper sticker is, give me $1 trillion of borrowed money and I'll show you what it looks like to live large. That has to be the answer to everything that Trump says about how great the economy is. Nader, I got to run. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Steve in Goldendale, Washington, listening on X-Ray FM. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Great.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
I have a Everything Goes Friday pair of questions for you.
Okay.
Why do the Kurds not have a homeland? Kurdistan, what would be Kurdistan, is divided into, 4 or 5 different nations?
Yes.
And the second half, and I read a lot, and I can't find information.
Well, let me answer that question first, because it's a very straightforward answer. After World War I, the powers got together and decided to carve up the Middle East, among other places, northern Africa, and they said, they basically divided Kurdistan into 4. Kurdistan was an independent country. I'm not sure exactly when, but and they got absorbed into the Ottoman Empire, and then they just broke it up. Why they did that, I'm not sure, but I suspect that the Kurds, being an autonomous ethnic group with their own language and their own variation on Islam, were viewed as a power. A force in the region, and the Peshmerga, the Kurdish military, is legendary for their fearlessness. So I'm guessing that when they broke Kurdistan, they put part of Kurdistan in Iraq, part of it in Syria, part of it in Turkey, and I'm not sure where the other part is, but I'd have to look on a map. But when they broke it up like that, that's what they were up to. Yeah, Iran. Yeah, you're right. And that's why the Kurds have been fighting for this all along. My mentor, Gottfried Müller, who was a German who was in the German army during World War II, parachuted into what should have been Kurdistan to help the Kurds overthrow the British, because that was then British occupied territory, in order to try and get oil for Hitler. He got captured. This was fairly early in the war. He got captured and spent the rest of the war in a prison camp, and he was like, thank God for that. I never had to kill anybody. He's no big fan of Hitler's. He got drafted and dragged into this thing. But he actually designed the flag that is being used by the Kurdish independence movement. Gottfried Müller did.
Interesting.
Yeah, I write about that in my book, Prophet's Way. So anyhow, your second question.
Within Kurdistan and southern Turkey, there's Göbekli Tepe. Why do we never hear about Göbekli Tepe? It is perhaps the most wonderful archaeological site there is on the planet.
I know nothing about this.
All the religions out of the water because it's so old.
Yeah, Steve, we have 45 seconds to the break. I don't know anything about it. In 45 seconds, can you summarize?
Göbekli Tepe, they figure it's about 12,000 years old. It dates back to Baalbek and is it Easter Island with the big stone things?
Yeah.
And it's just, but it was covered up about 9,000 years ago. And so the archaeological site is almost untouched.
Covered up, you mean like buried in sand kind of thing?
Yeah.
As a result of...
And so what they're finding there is just these incredible ruins that almost haven't been ruined.
Wow. If there's any good links to that, Steve, or a good website that describes all that, would you please tweet it to me?
Well, that's just it. There isn't any information on it.
Well, there's got to be something. I mean, some old National Geographic piece or something. I don't know how to spell it, and I'm sorry I can't write it down right now. We're hitting this break. But if you can find anything on it, I'd love to see it. It sounds fascinating. It sounds like Corral, which I wrote about in my book, Threshold. We'll be right back. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. Anything Goes Friday, and we did just add a guest to the lineup, right? Yeah, Minister Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove is going to drop by right after the news at the bottom of the hour, so stick around. It's going to get interesting. It's Anything Goes Friday, whatever you'd like to talk about. Charlie in Redwood Valley, California. Hey, Charlie, thanks for listening to iHeartRadio. What's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I've heard you talk several times about Roosevelt back in the day threatening to pack the Supreme Court, that he could add Supreme Court.
That's correct. 6 justices.
So is that possible today? Could we, in 2020, if we elect a good president, could they add any number of judges to swing the balance back?
They could. And, the question is whether that's something that could be... Well, it's very simple. Congress, according to the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, Congress has the authority to regulate the Supreme Court. The word regulate is the actual word that they use. And by that, Congress defines how many members the Supreme Court has. When it first started out, as I recall, it might have been 5, and then it went to 7, I think, after the Constitution was adopted. It's been at various times 9. During Reconstruction, when the Supreme Court was going against Reconstruction, the radical Republicans, Thaddeus Stevens, led the charge in the United States Senate to get the court raised to 10. And so for a couple of years, there were 10 members of the Supreme Court so that they could overcome basically they packed the court. The court went back down to 9 again. It's been 9, I believe, pretty much ever since then, but it's changed a number of times, and it's always changed by Congress. It would take legislation passed by the House, then passed by the Senate, and in both cases, if there's not a filibuster, it could be done with a simple majority. If there is a filibuster, it would take 60 votes in the Senate, and then signed by the president. It's just that simple. You pass legislation saying the number of members is now 10. Or the number of members is now 11. You want to have an odd number, is now 11. The scheme that FDR came up with was that each member of the court who was over 70 years old, and at that point in time, 6 of the 9 justices were over 70. So this would have affected 6 justices. Only 3 would have stayed on the court. All of those justices instantly would have become what FDR referred to as justices emeritus and lost their vote. If they still wanted to have a vote or a voice in the Supreme Court, they could, they had a choice, basically. They could retire or they could stay on. If they stayed on, they didn't have a vote. Instead, a co-justice would be appointed by the president who would vote on their behalf, essentially, only would vote, with that justice's own independent mind. And they, for at least 5 of them, and then the 6th vote would be, they would all have one collective vote, all the guys over 70. And it was kind of a convoluted scheme, but it was a good way of, over the short term, packing the court, and over the long term, not actually changing the profile of the court. It was a pretty slick trick.
Mm-hmm. Well, if this guy does get in, and we can actually maintain some sort of a, quote, blue wave for a couple of years, then this may just be a setback if we can come back to our senses here.
I agree. And Michael Avenatti tweeted this yesterday or the day before, and I retweeted his tweet. He said, if we can take back the House and the Senate and the White House in the 2020 election, then in 2021, the first order of business is to expand the size of the Supreme Court. And I do not disagree with that. I think that it's bad politics to talk about it out loud right now. But I think it's a very good idea, and it's got a great precedent behind it. From FDR to Thaddeus Stevens and the radical Republicans. These were the anti-slavery Republicans in the 1860s. Charlie, thanks for the call.
We'll keep it quiet.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, don't talk about it on national radio. I love it. Larry in Red Bluff, California, listening on KFOI. Hey, Larry, what's up?
I'd like to talk about getting rid of Trump, but not only Trump. I want to get rid of all of his appointments. if he's found to have been in collusion with the Russians, that should nullify the election totally, and all of his, not only him, but Pence is gone. All of the Supreme Court justices should be null and void, and all of the other justices that they've done to destroy our judicial system.
I completely agree with you, Larry. The problem is that there is no provision for that in the Constitution. The closest we can get to it is the 25th Amendment, which was passed in 1967, subsequent to the death of John Kennedy. And what it says is that, and this is the remedy that was mentioned in that editorial, what it says is that the vice president has to assert in a letter to the Speaker of the House and the President pro tem of the Senate, which would be Paul Ryan and Orrin Hatch, the vice president has to say that the president's no longer capable of carrying out his duties. Then, in order to sustain that past 3 weeks, it requires a 2/3 vote of both the House and the Senate. Extremely unlikely. Larry, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And to Larry's point, that doesn't get rid of Mike Pence. It doesn't get rid of Betsy DeVos. It doesn't get rid of Ryan Zinke. It doesn't get rid of the Supreme Court. We just don't have that mechanism in the Constitution. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive yesterday. Thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. We could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air, if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via a Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org. On the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives. Or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. So far, we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. We've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out, in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now 877-378-8669 and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically three large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says Vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people, a great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically little office suite in Portland, Oregon, creating a mini television studio in an office and making it work and getting the show out to you. And I think that, it's a lot of fun to pull the curtain back. So call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
It's 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is the Minister Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove. He is a preacher. He is a partner in crime with the Dr. Reverend William Barber in the Moral Mondays in North Carolina. He's the director of the School for Conversion in Durham, North Carolina. And he's the author of a new book, which we have featured in our Thom Hartmann book reports, Reconstructing the Gospel, Finding Freedom from Slaveholder Religion. His website is jonathanwilsonhartgrove.com, and you can tweet him at WilsonHartgrove. And Minister Wilson Hartgrove, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Or welcome back to the program. I know you were on with Reverend Barber the last time we talked, as I recall. You've got a brilliant op-ed in the New York Times right now, and I strongly recommend people go check it out. It's titled "The Evangelical Case Against Judge Kavanaugh." It's not on the homepage when you hit NewYorkTimes.com, but I hit the little eyeglass, the search thing, and just typed in the word evangelical, and it popped up as the very, very top story. So can you lay out for us the evangelical case against Brett Kavanaugh?
Well, thanks for giving me a few minutes here, because I think this is really important, because so much of the coverage has pitted evangelicals who are supposed to be in favor of Kavanaugh with the women's rights and civil rights groups and gun control groups that have grave concerns. And I wanted to say as clearly as I can why I think the religious right has really duped the evangelical community for some time, and that this nomination of Kavanaugh is really a critical moment. Their enthusiasm is largely rooted in their belief that he will join, the other four justices who have ties to the Federalist Society and will implement the extreme agenda that they've been organizing for the last 40 years. And that agenda is counter to what I take to be the central public concerns of the Bible. If you read the prophets or Jesus, the main concern is for the widows, the children, and the immigrant. And on the issues that are coming before the court, from immigration issues to voting rights issues to the rights of women and gender minorities, I mean, this is the equal protection under the law is a huge thing. And I think the way that Christians have been told that when we stand for quote unquote life, very narrowly defined as being against abortion and against legislation that makes that option available to people. It's really been a way of leading the community to vote against its own values.
Yeah, it seems absolutely to be the case. It's been probably 40 years. I was an ordained minister, and I have read the Bible a number of times, and I went through a form of seminary back in the day, and ran a church for 3 years, 3.5 years,
You're still preaching.
As the pastor, yeah, I know. But it's been a while since I've read the Bible, but my recollection is in John, in like the 4th or 5th or 6th chapter of John. There's some, not the book of John, the 1st John, that there's a rant about look out for the ravening wolves who are coming in sheep's clothing. You'll know them by their fruit. Well, know them by their fruit is one of Jesus's rants, but there's also something in John about this, and I'm wondering. If you can,
John says the measure is our love for one another.
Well, that too, but I'm concerned about the possibility that the evangelical movement has been basically co-opted from within by people who, by the definitions of Jesus, are not Christians. By the standards of Matthew 25, they're not followers of the teachings of Christ, and that this corruption of the evangelical movement is something that is, frankly, I don't even think is being discussed inside the evangelical movement, or at least the white evangelical movement.
Yeah, many of us are trying. What breaks my heart is that if you go back, 50 years and ask who was trying to do then what evangelicals, or at least these so-called spokespeople for evangelicals, are so enthused about today, you find the John Birch Society, right? That's who was trying to impeach Earl Warren after what they now call, quote-unquote, activist judges began to make decisions in the 1960s that were expanding democracy.
It was also Brown v. Board. That was the thing that really kicked them off.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what fired them up. And while Kavanaugh will say that he thinks, Brown v. Board was a defining moment for the court, he certainly hasn't said anything in the last few days to say that he would support the many decisions since then that have tried to actually implement it. Because, I live in Durham, North Carolina. Brown v. Board was 1954. They didn't integrate schools here until 1971. So there was a long-term fight to resist Brown, and there has been an even longer fight to try to roll it back. And I think the way that those corporate interests and, frankly, racist ideologies were used to organize the evangelical community, and to say that it was about Roe v. Wade, even though what really got the religious right fired up was under the Carter administration, when the IRS came down on their independent schools, which were essentially segregation academies, an attempt to have education that was only for white kids. That whole history has been whitewashed, and there's this cherry picking of verses, that sound good and moral. And to me, it's exactly what Jesus and John, who you mentioned, and the prophets in the Old Testament were talking about when they talked about how dangerous it is when religious figures kowtow to power and use religion to cover over the way power is being abused.
Yeah. So just to put a punctuation point on this, we're talking with Minister Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove, the director of the School for Conversion in Durham, North Carolina, the author of Reconstructing the Gospel, Finding Freedom from Slaveholder Religion. What specifically, if you had to boil this down to essentially a bumper sticker or a message that you would leave on the answering machine of your senator, if you called 202-224-3121 for the U.S. Senate, what would that be about Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yeah, what I'm saying to Senator Thom Tillis and Senator Richard Burr from here in North Carolina, and to any others who will listen, is that as a Christian and as someone who is committed to life, my grave concern is that Kavanaugh's record demonstrates that on the issues of equal protection under the law for ethnic minorities, for LGBTQ community, for workers' rights, all of those things I think are, and for voting rights especially. I mean, here in North Carolina, we've had a long struggle against voting rights. We won it at the Supreme Court, our fight to overturn a voter suppression law, but now the legislature that Thom Tillis oversaw as Speaker until he went to the Senate, now that same legislature has put the voter ID that was deemed intentional racism by the Supreme Court, they've put it on the ballot for us to vote for this November.
Yep.
So on all of these issues, I think it's incredibly important for people of faith to say, because we love our neighbor, we don't want to see a judge who's committed to such extremism on the court.
Yeah. I'm with you. Minister Wilson Hartgrove, thank you so much for dropping by today. It's great talking with you, and I appreciate your perspective and your willingness to speak out. Thank you so much, sir.
Good to talk to you. Take care.
And once again, let me refer people to Minister Hartgrove, Wilson Hartgrove's op-ed in today's New York Times, The Evangelical Case Against Judge Kavanaugh. It is a great read. It really is. Check it out. We'll be back with your calls on Anything Goes Friday right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with Talk Media News in about 4 minutes. Stick around. Welcome back. Chris in Stowe, Ohio. Hey, Chris, thanks for watching Free Speech TV, and thanks for sitting on hold so long. I apologize for how long you've been there. What's up?
Hey, that's okay, Tom. I'm just glad to get to talk to you. I hang on every word you say. I've been sick a long time, and so you're like the one bright light in my life because I agree with everything that you say.
Oh, my. Well, thank you, Chris.
I had been making lists of things to talk about, like the crash is coming. I'm convinced of that. Oh, I should tell you, I've been a professional astrologer since, well, I started reading about it. I'm your age, and I started reading and studying in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I started practicing professionally by 1980. So I think planets and signs. And I really thought our biggest problems were Donald Trump. But once these Kavanaugh hearings started up, I just crashed. I haven't been able to sleep or eat or anything.
Well, that doesn't help anybody, Chris.
Well, I know, but calling you, I think, will help make it a little bit better because I do think that there are good things coming. This chart for Kavanaugh is so bad. When these people have been heaping all this praise on him, and it's been making me sick because he is absolutely the opposite of everything they're saying about him. He keeps saying he's a judge, he's a judge, he's a judge, and everybody talks about how decent and humble and good he is, and his sense of humor, and none of this stuff is true. If there's one thing I know, it's that these planets do not lie. This is not a good judge. This man is completely biased. He's unjust. He's cruel. He has no sense of humor. He's not nice. I mean, he's the kind of person who says, "Do as I do, as I say, not as I do." Yeah. He's inflexible. He's rigid. He's
well. We're still waiting to find out why he had $100,000 or $200,000 in credit card debt and who paid it off. And does the guy have a gambling problem? I mean, what's going on here?
He's completely dishonest.
I came to that conclusion from watching the hearings, too. Chris, thank you for the call. I want to get another caller in here before the break. I appreciate it. Mark in Seattle, listening on KBCS. Hey, Mark, what's up? Whoop, I'm sorry, Mark, my fault. Let me push the button. Now you're on the air, Mark.
Yes, it's Mark Taylor Cancel. Good to talk to you, Tom. I wanted to say that I'm really glad to see over 350 news organizations answering the call from the Boston Globe on August 16th to publish editorials on freedom of the press.
Yep.
And as editor for Press Freedom at Democracy Watch News, I'm really happy to see the mainstream news agencies finally focusing for the first time on this very, very important issue. And I did participate by writing an op-ed at Daily Kos about the importance of freedom of the press and some of the reason that the United States is ranked 45th in the world by Reporters Without Borders, which, of course, Trump's rhetoric is not helping our ranking at this point.
Yeah, to say the very least. And now he's amped it up. He's got a renewed call for basically tearing down the First Amendment and replacing it with stronger libel laws. And I think Brett Kavanaugh and the other 4 Federalist Society right-wing cranks on the court right now would go along with that, which scares the hell out of me. Mark, thank you for the call. Thanks for listening to us on KBCS. We'll be right back. It's 48 minutes past the hour. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. On the line with us is Bob Ney. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. And Congressman, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Tom.
I should add, you're the author of the book Sideswipe, which is really worth getting and reading. So what's on the hit parade? I wasn't able to watch President Obama's entire speech. Were there any high points that you caught?
Yes. I think that with President Obama's speech, it was just really a fantastic message, I would say. And what he's saying is that you can go ahead and, complain about things and how the state of affairs are, but the real problem remains in the sense that you've got to get to the ballot box. You can wrench your hands. He didn't say that exactly, but you've got to get to the ballot box. And if you don't do that, then that's a real problem. Yeah,
no more hand-wringing. And he pointed out that only 1 out of 5 young people voted in the last election.
Well, yes, that's the other thing. He was talking about participation, people getting out to vote. And also, I mean, he obviously hit on, definitely on President Trump and about the voices. Then he talked about how the promise was there to clean up corruption and then plunder away. He said they start undermining norms that assure accountability, and they appeal to racial nationalism. He said, does this sound familiar? And basically, Tom, what he said is, how hard is it? Well, not basically, he said, how hard is it to denounce Nazis? Was what he was referring to, obviously, with, Charlottesville. So he had his attacks, but I must say the president has consistently, when there's hand-wringing, which is okay, but the president consistently warns, I think, the people and the Democratic Party, wring your hands, but get out to vote. And the fact of, getting young people participating in the system. So this was the launch of the midterms for President Obama. Midterm participation.
Fascinating, and a good thing. I'm so glad to see him back in the fray. I'm reading this piece in Slate by William Selatan saying that the obvious suspect for the anonymous op-ed is John Huntsman. Apparently, he's the U.S. ambassador to Russia, and was a contender for the Republican primary. And apparently, his denial is a non-denial denial. And a lot of the things that is said in the op-ed are just classic Huntsman, right down to some of the language. What are your thoughts on who might have written this?
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking, how could Huntsman, on a daily basis, influence the operation of the Oval Office?
From Moscow.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to argue and still argue that no matter who this is, and I don't know who, it's not the vice president. I don't believe it's Huntsman. It's somebody inside there. I still argue that they may fire this person when they catch them, and maybe they, quote, be quiet and get a nice little job later or some contract or lobby contract. I'm still arguing this is a branding. It is known. They knew. And now, President Trump's saying, Sessions, I want you to find out who this is and things like that. I still think if Trump didn't know, somebody high up, maybe the chief of staff or whatever, said, we've got to do something, we've got to change his behavior, this is the way we do it.
So you're still in the camp that thinks that it might be John Kelly? John Kelly's apparently not issued a denial.
John Kelly or an assistant to Kelly, which would be high up.
Right.
And what I think they did is they're trying to, I don't think they're trying to do the country a favor, I think they're trying to rehabilitate the president to keep him going.
I think they're trying to rehabilitate themselves. I mean, none of these people who have left, you look at Sean Spicer, none of these guys who have left the Oval Office, being near Trump, have been able to land a good job because their reputations are so destroyed by their association with Trump. So, if John Kelly wrote this and he wants to get a job, after he leaves office at, typically what a person of his stature would get is $1 million a year job of showing up 4 times a year at, one of the big defense contractors as a member of their board of directors, and they just pay him an obscene amount of money. That's how generals retire out of the military these days.
Right.
And so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just think he's trying to protect his retirement.
Yeah, and I think, look, the military thinking always is, they've got to do this, they're saving the country, et cetera. So it's that style of thinking that, makes right what they need to do. Now, I'm not criticizing the veterans. I'm just talking about the Pentagon, right?
Right.
That's how they think. And I'm looking at this, and I just seriously believe, maybe Trump didn't know, but they're trying to do it more to save themselves, the Oval Office, than they are to do a cause. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree with Frank Rich's piece in The New Yorker today. That he says that this guy is like the Vichy French, the French collaborators who fought on the side of Hitler, or who were on Hitler's side inside France. And among the Vichy French, there were people who claimed to be parts of the resistance, particularly after the war. And they actually weren't the resistance. They were actually the collaborators. That whoever wrote this thing is a collaborator, not a resistor.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts?
Yes.
You agree with that sentiment?
Inside. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's, like I said, I've argued day one, this isn't some white knight that's in there and they're going to do something. This is a planned, methodical reason this was done.
Yeah, I agree.
And it wasn't to save, quote, the country.
I agree. What else is in the news, Bob?
Well, I just wanted to comment on Giuliani for a second. You and I talked way back when. The first day he went on TV, he wasn't a lawyer. He was on there to day one, set this up for what happened yesterday, which is, the president is going to say nothing about anything. He's not going to answer anything.
So with regard to the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, and so it's right into Mueller's court of what he wants to do. So I think from day one, there was no intentions ever to do this. Giuliani was the guy that was out there. And again, friends of mine talked about his legal ability. I said, you've got to be kidding me. He was out there to set the stage for what happened yesterday, which is, that's it. There'll be no communication, period. And if Mueller has to make a choice, what does he do? And if he indicts or he subpoenas, boom, it's going to go into the court, combined with the op-ed and the deep state and everything that's going on. Then the Republicans put out a mantra, to try to effectively save themselves, that there's this plot out there to undo things that are going to be done, for the good of the people, quote. And there's this plot, including Mueller.
Yeah. And
that's what I think happens with it.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. What else is up?
Well, also, we were looking, Senator Booker, this is interesting, Tom, because as you know, he was willing to take penalties, to release information. And the committee itself, even though President Bush's attorney, Burke, says he talked to Senator Booker's office, it was fascinating. And let's assume he did do that, to talk to Senator Booker's office. They were going to approve this to be released. It was fascinating. The next day, when this started, the committee didn't even know it.
Right.
They had no idea.
Yeah, and I believe Cory Booker that he didn't know it, or that it wasn't yet available.
Yes.
I don't think he was grandstanding. I think that this was a serious pushback. And by the way, when do you think the Senate's going to vote on Kavanaugh?
Kavanaugh will be in place by October the 1st. In place.
Wow. Okay.
In place.
That's incredible. Bob Ney, Good Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Always good talking to you. That's assuming that Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins don't flip. And we got to do everything we can to get them to flip. The number for the Senate is 202-224-3121. We'll be back with more of Anything Goes Friday right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive. Yesterday, thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. We could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via a Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org. On the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives. Or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. So far, we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. We've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out, in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now 877-378-8669 and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically 3 large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people, a great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically little office suite in Portland, Oregon, creating a mini television studio in an office and making it work and getting the show out to you. And I think it's a lot of fun to pull the curtain back. So call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program with a tip of the hat to Travis Geddes over at Raw's Story. He writes some really great stuff. And today he listened to President Obama's speech and summarized 9 high points. And I'll just share them with you in my voice rather than President Obama's. We frankly have not had the time here to cut the speech up. And I think these are great. Number 1, what happened to the Republican Party? Said President Trump. I said President Obama. What happened to the Republican Party? Its central organizing principle in foreign policy was the fight against communism, and now they're cozying up to the former head of the KGB. They're actively blocking legislation that would protect our elections from foreign interference. What happened? Number 2, demagogues promise simple fixes to complex problems. They will promise to fight for the little guy even as they cater to the wealthiest and most powerful. They will promise to clean up corruption, and then they will plunder away. Number 3, the claim that everything will turn out okay, President Obama said, the claim that everything will turn out okay because there are people inside the White House who secretly are not following the president's orders? That's not a check. I'm being serious here. That's not how our democracy is supposed to work. These people aren't elected. They're not accountable. They're not doing us a service by actively promoting 90% of the crazy stuff that's coming out of this White House and then saying, don't worry, we're preventing 10%. That's not how things are supposed to work. This is not normal. President Obama also said, number 4, it should not be Democratic or Republican. It should not be a partisan issue to say we should not use the Attorney General or the Justice Department as a cudgel to punish our political opponents. Number 5, we are Americans. We're supposed to stand up to bullies, not follow them. We're supposed to stand up to discrimination, and we're sure as heck supposed to stand up clearly and unequivocally to Nazi sympathizers. How hard can that be, saying Nazis are bad? Number 6, it did not start with Donald Trump. He is a symptom, not the cause. He's just capitalizing on resentments that politicians have been fanning for years. I would add not just politicians, but cranky right-wing billionaires. Number 7, when you hear how great the economy is doing right now, let's just remember when this economic recovery started. I mean, I'm glad it's continued, but when you hear about this economic miracle that's been going on, when the monthly job numbers come out, Republicans say, it's a miracle. I have to remind them and say those job numbers are the same as they were in 2015 and 2016. Number 8, the politics of division and resentment and paranoia have unfortunately found a home in the Republican Party. This Congress has championed unwinding of campaign laws to give billionaires outside influence over our politics. Systematically attacked voting rights to make it harder for young, minorities, and the poor to vote. Handed out tax cuts without regard to the deficit, slashed the safety net wherever it could, cast dozens of votes to take away health insurance from ordinary Americans, embraced wild conspiracies like those surrounding Benghazi or my birth certificate, rejected science, rejected facts on things like climate change, embraced a rising absolutism from a willingness to a default on Americans' debt by not paying bills to a refusal to even meet, much less consider, a qualified nominee for the Supreme Court because he happened to be nominated by a Democratic president. None of this is conservative. And number 9, we have a chance to restore some semblance of sanity to our politics. From your lips to God's ears, President Obama. Colin in Kirkland, Washington. Hey, Colin, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Oh, yes. Thank you for taking my call. There's 2 things I wanted to touch on was the possibility of a Mike Pence presidency and also this debacle with Kavanaugh. So there's a couple things. With Mike Pence, and I realize this probably sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory, but I'm starting to wonder if Mike Pence was really the real pick of the Republican Party to be our president, because it seems more and more, especially now with this the New York Times op-ed and all these never-ending leaks from the White House that continually put all these, smears and scandals up on Trump. I'm wondering if Trump was basically just the designated just to be the, how would you say, I guess, the patsy to take the fall, or the sacrificial lamb.
No, I think he's created that for himself. Donald Trump won the primary by embracing Democratic rhetoric. Donald Trump won the primary by promising that he was going to protect Social Security and Medicare. He lied. And in fact, last night in Montana, he said the Democrats are going to tear down Social Security and Medicare. He lied. He said he was going to protect factory workers' jobs. He lied. He said he was going to change our trade policies in a meaningful and consequential way. He's changing our trade policies, but not in a permanent way and not in a meaningful way. He lied. He said that he was going to provide health insurance to everybody in America at a lower cost than Obamacare, and it would be more comprehensive. He lied. But these were Democratic talking points that Donald Trump adopted, and that's how he won the Republican primary. He did not want Mike Pence as his vice president. I am so certain of this. I can't point to any actual evidence, but there have been numerous articles written about this, that basically the billionaires sat him down and said, you are going to have our loyal little toady, Mike Pence, who has been on our payroll since he left right-wing talk radio and ran for the U.S. House of Representatives. You're going to have him as your vice president because we need our guy in the White House. And that's our price for supporting you in the general election. And Trump said, OK, fine, I'll put him on the ticket. That's my opinion of what happened. And I don't, to the extent that Trump might get sacrificed, and I think there's a very good chance that he's not going to serve out his full 4 years, I think it's going to be at his own hand. I don't think it's going to be the result of the billionaires going after him.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
So,
I think the billionaires are quite happy with what he's doing, in fact. Colin, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching our show. Fred in Los Angeles. Hey, Fred, what's up?
Hi. How you doing?
Good.
Just to let you know that we do pay attention when you do your book readings. A while back, you were reading from something about Thomas Jefferson, and you quoted him saying that when the people, I think it was the people, discover that they can lower their taxes by borrowing on the budget, that we would be in a lot of trouble. Well, isn't that what the Republicans did?
That's what the Republicans are doing. It's been their strategy since the 70s with the two Santa Claus theory. But Thomas Jefferson never spoke about that, to the best of my knowledge.
Not the two Santa Claus theory, but about borrowing against the budget.
Oh, yeah. There was a point at which Jefferson said that we would end up broke and indebted. Yeah, I remember the quote now. He was not speaking against populism per se or for federalism. There was a specific context to that, and I'm sorry I don't remember it right off the top of my head. But what's your point, Fred?
You got a book out again.
Yeah, I should. In fact, I think it was my own book. But what's your point?
Well, no, I'm just saying it seems rather prescient to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was. Well, you could say he was prescient. We have had a federal budget deficit since the founding of the republic. When George Washington became president, the U.S. was badly in debt, mostly to France. And the only time that we have paid off our federal budget deficit was during the administration of Andrew Jackson. And he paid it down to zero. And the result of that was that then banks, wealthy people, and even average people no longer had a safe place to put their money. And that led to massive corruption in the banking sector, which then led to the largest, longest, and deepest depression in the history of the United States. NPR did a great report on this maybe 10 years ago that you can probably easily find on Google. Andrew Jackson, national debt, NPR would be the keywords that I would put in, or into DuckDuckGo. But yeah, this has been an issue for a long time, Fred. But the problem is not the debt. The problem is using the debt as a political weapon. What the Republicans are doing is they are intentionally, and they've been doing this since the Reagan administration. Judah Wininsky came up with this theory during the Carter administration that when Republicans take control of the United States House and Senate, and in particular the White House, that when the Republicans are running the show, their number one job has to be to run the debt up, the national debt up, as hard and as fast as possible, so that when Democrats follow them, which inevitably happens, so that when Democrats come into office, the Republicans can yell and scream about the national debt and how dangerous and destructive it is and force the Democrats to shoot their Santa Claus, Social Security, Medicare, the social safety net, unemployment insurance. And sure enough, they have been doing this. They've done it year after year after year, election cycle after election cycle. This is the core of the Republican strategy to destroy the social safety net. And that's why they come out and they say the Democrats are going to kill Social Security, because the Republicans think that they can force them to do it. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. It's 16 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Let's see here. Catherine in Vancouver Island, BC. I was
Yes.
nearby, and Catherine, I was in Victoria there just a while ago. Well, I guess that's on the island, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Kameshwari Kate calling from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and this is the unceded territory of the Coast Salish, Sinamo. And I recall that you were up here just several weeks ago, and I wanted to, and I actually imagined that while you were in Victoria, you were sitting out on an outdoor cafe at Be Love, and you mentioned when you were there that you noticed that there weren't very many homeless. And actually, I wanted to let you know that that isn't exactly true. That area that you could have been in if you were seated at Be Love, the vegan cafe, that maybe you were missing the homeless because there's a discontent city in Vancouver and up here in Nanaimo. Is that true?
I don't know. We traveled around, looked around, but I didn't see any homeless people. I saw one.
Yeah.
But are you saying, Catherine, that the homeless problem in Canada is as bad as it is in the United States?
No, it is not. And what the reason for that is most cities are working on pilot programs that have homes. Pilot programs that create low barrier supported housing, meaning that people who have no income or lost their jobs or are leaving drug treatment facilities or getting out of jail can find small homes in low barrier supported housing that is mental health, has mental health support. And the places are like virtually little bachelor apartments, tiny one-room or one-room places with a bed and a place to cook. But there are cities, or what they're calling discontent cities, where there are over 100 tents of encampments in both Nanaimo and in Victoria. Plus, my husband and I also have a place over in Vancouver, and we live right downtown. And I go out walking at 5 in the morning, and there are people virtually lying every place on the streets, like right under traffic control lights, in doorways to buildings.
What's causing that, Catherine?
For one thing that I work with is I interview people. I have a radio show here, a local radio show, and I ask them why they're here in British Columbia. A lot of people are leaving the oil fields, like up in Alberta, and I started interviewing people in 2015. They're leaving the oil fields in Alberta when the Fort MacArthur fire burned down everybody's home. They lost trucks. People had enormous debt because they were working in the oil fields. I hear it's the end.
Yeah, it is. So people got wiped out. That's fascinating. Catherine, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Please make it a more positive note as we end the week on Anything Goes Friday.
Okay, I'll do my best. Catherine, thank you so much for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook.
It's Anything Goes Friday. There we go. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's Anything Goes Friday, and picking up your phone calls. Heather in Seattle. Hey, Heather, thanks for listening to KDCS. What's up?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. So I'm hearing a lot of Democrats, and even Bob and I, say that, Kavanaugh is just a given and there's no way to stop him. So I live in Seattle, and every week we have enormous cruise ships coming in, and you're going to be on one of those ships next year, I guess.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do...
It'll be a little less than enormous, but yeah.
Well, we have the largest ship in the world coming in.
Oh, my.
And so what I'd like to do is put out there, we need to boycott Alaska.
Because of Lisa Murkowski, you mean?
Yes.
And it's not Don Young. Who's the other senator from Alaska?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank too.
But she needs to hear that there will be consequences for her vote.
Mm-hmm.
We will be out there in front of the cruise ships.
Oh, that's interesting.
With coffins of women that, have died because of her vote.
Yeah. She needs to hear it, I think, mostly from women who are saying, you could be the swing vote. You are the swing vote, actually. You could be the one who defeats this nomination. And Kavanaugh has just right up front refused to say that Roe v. Wade was correctly decided. He said it's settled law. Obviously, that's like, saying the sky is blue. But that doesn't mean that it can't be overturned. The Supreme Court can overturn things. So, Heather, very well said. Thank you very much for the call. And spot on. And if you want to call Lisa Murkowski's office or Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, these are the two women who are openly pro-choice Republicans. And they have, between the two of them, they have the ability to stop Brett Kavanaugh. And the number is 202-224-3121. Marie in Bellevue, Washington. Hey, Marie, what's up?
Well, first of all, I want to briefly state why this issue is important to me. And
which issue?
The issue is torture.
Okay.
Now, in 1973, when the first 9/11 was taking place in Chile, and that elected president was being done away with U.S. intervention leading to his overthrow.
Right.
I was in Uruguay, and I was doing literary research, and my literary research brought me to the issue of torture. And the thing is that I had to go into a period of not speaking about it because my university didn't want to run the jeopardy of, apparently this is what was happening, the university didn't want to run the jeopardy of trying to get money from the feds and having a graduate student, first one they'd ever sent to Uruguay, talking about a forbidden topic.
Right. We should note, by the way, that when Pinochet staged his military coup in Chile, he was largely supported by the U.S. government.
Yeah, I didn't emphasize that, but that is absolutely.
In fact, with the help of the CIA, this all happened.
Currently, I hear the issue of torture from time to time, that word appearing in things being said about Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. But I myself do not know the details of what his role has been, but apparently he is someone who will be congenial to torture. I don't know if I'm correct.
It appears that he participated in the Bush White House in conversations with John Yoo and Jay Bybee, the guys who wrote the torture memo, or at least John Yoo we know of. We've got an email of communication with these guys in ratifying the Bush administration's torture program. And he has lied about it under oath at least once, and I believe twice, in 2004 and 2006 before the U.S. Senate.
Okay. Well, I just want your listeners to be aware of another issue that is a no-no for Kavanaugh, and I want people to be aware that. And
that issue is torture, or is there another one you wanted to stack on there?
Well, no, torture. There are plenty of others.
Torture is a big deal. Torture, you know, the Bush torture is arguably one of the largest indictments against the United States. It's certainly in my lifetime. I mean, it was just absolutely massive, and the damage that has done to our reputation, and to the willingness, how it has encouraged governments like Duterte's or El Sisi's, you know, in the Philippines or in Egypt, to continue their own torture programs is horrific. I'm with you, Marie. Thank you for the call. It's spot on. It's 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars right after this. Day 2 of the Fall Pledge Drive yesterday. Thank you so much. We raised $7,500. Our goal, of course, as always, is $10,000 a day, so we're behind already. That said, thank you so much for those of you who called in yesterday at 877-378-8669 and said, yes, I want to support Free Speech TV. I am so appreciative of your early support. And, you know, it's so important that we keep this television network on the air. If you find this show of value, here is where you can, you know, make sure that it's still available to you. And I would say, more importantly, get it out to as many people as possible. You know, we could cut these fund drives in half in terms of the length of them if we had twice as many viewers. Think about that for a second. If today, in addition to calling 877-378-8669 and making a contribution to Free Speech TV to keep this network on the air, if in addition to doing that, you were able to successfully communicate to, say, 3 people over the course of, say, the next week. Although, you know, 3 people, you could do it today, right? You could even send out an email to a half a dozen friends or something. That Free Speech TV is available for free on Dish Network, on DirecTV. It can be streamed on the internet via a Roku box from its website itself at freespeech.org, on the Apple, I believe it's on the Apple TV box. If it's not, it will be shortly. On Sling TV, it's how Louise and I watch it on Sling TV. That there's all kinds of ways to get Free Speech TV. You don't have to buy satellite TV to watch this show on this network. And if you could get one other person, in addition to yourself, who's a potential donor, watching the network, or say 2 or 3 people occasionally watching the network, the odds are 1 out of those 3 is going to become a donor, then we could radically scale back these fund drives. Or we could raise more money for Free Speech TV and grow the network, add new shows, bring in more talent, you know, maybe even have more of a live news element. I mean, there's so many things that could be done. And I know that the management of Free Speech TV for years has been looking at ways to do outreach and get the word out. You know, so far we haven't seen a lot of consequence of that, you know, unfortunately. But I know that that's on the agenda too. And probably up to this point, that hasn't been a focus of attention because they've been in survival mode. You know, we've got to keep the network on the air. And so if you can help out in addition to calling now and making a contribution to help the network, any amount that you can is useful, although we have some premiums for specific amounts. If you could help out by calling now 877-378-8669 and making a contribution, it'll go a long way. This is really important content. It's content that you will not find on network television, you will not find commercial network television, and you will not find on local radio by and large either. I mean, we've got a couple of big stations in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but by and large, most of America, and particularly the red state America, has literally no access to progressive programming. There's not a single radio station, to the best of my knowledge, in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska, in Kansas, that carries even one progressive show. The entire radio industry is basically owned, or much of the radio industry is owned by basically 3 large corporations and a few secondary players, and all of them are run by right-wing ideologues. So Free Speech TV is the camel's nose under the tent, right? Free Speech TV is how we get that message into the red states. And you can help make that happen by contributing to Free Speech TV and by telling your friends about it. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV mini kit, which is a bumper sticker that says Vote November 6th of this year, and a Vote Free Speech TV button. With a $72 contribution, you get my book, We the People, A Call to Take Back America. This is an illustrated book. It is great. It's a great gift for young people, a great gift for old people. I mean, it's not dumbed down at all. This is a really, really good book. I think you'll really appreciate it. With a $120 gift, you get a Vote Free Speech TV t-shirt, and along with the button and the bumper sticker. With a $240 gift, now these gifts can be spread out over a year if you want. Just say, ding my credit card, $20 a month for 12 months. That's $240. With that, you get a hoodie kit, the Free Speech TV hoodie, plus the button and the bumper sticker. With $360, you get the Vote for Our Future pack. That's the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and sticker. With $480 or $40 a month, you get all of the above, which includes the book, We the People, the hoodie, the t-shirt, the bumper sticker, and the button. And with $1,000, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can hang out in the studio here for the last hour of the show and see how it's done. We're really a fairly small, fairly modest operation, and frankly proud of that, of everything that we're able to do from just this basically little office suite in Portland, Oregon, creating a mini television studio in an office and making it work and getting the show out to you. And I think that, it's a lot of fun to pull the curtain back. So call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. It's a once-in-a-lifetime luxury Alaskan cruise on the Regent 7th Mariner, July 24th, 2019. For more information, Keen Luxury Travel, 800-856-1155. And did I mention, we'll be getting active on board with special events with yours truly, me, as we visit Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Sitka, Hubbard Glacier, and Anchorage. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. A couple of things I wanted to point out. Just imagine if this had been an Obama supporter. This is floating around the Twitterverse. I retweeted it earlier, and quite a few people have responded to it on my Twitter feed over at Thom_Hartmann. And it was originally tweeted by Riot Women. And it's a video of Trump's speech last night, his campaign rally last night in Montana. Yes, he's campaigning for president for 2020. He kicked off that campaign the day after he was inaugurated so that they could raise campaign money, which is not regulated the way that other kinds of money are. But in any case, it's a Trump supporter standing right behind Trump in the shot who takes the American flag and wipes her nose all over it. And it's as gross as it sounds. In fact, it's grosser than it sounds. You could see it over on our Twitter feed. And then there's this weird thing with this young woman, Zena Bash, who was sitting behind Kavanaugh throughout at least 2 of the 3 days of the hearings, maybe all 3. And she's worked apparently with Stephen Miller in the White House. Stephen Miller famously in front of the White House podium making white power signs, aping for photographers. Aping is the wrong word, right? That's anyhow, you know what I mean, and making it the white power signs, and she gets a text message, and then she does this white power sign, and then the Twitterverse blows up. Everybody gets hysterical. Then her husband comes out and says, "No, wait a minute. Her mother's Latina and her father's Jewish, or the other way around. And why would she, be making a white power sign?" And then the next day, yesterday, she does it again. And so the question, is she trying to flip out people who are flipped out easily by people pretending to be fans of white power? And if so, why? Why would you do that in the hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, one of the most white bread guys ever put on the Supreme Court? I mean, it seems like she would be hurting herself, even if it's just trolling. And then last night, when Trump was speaking in Montana, he kept making the same sign. It's the OK sign, right? Which is the O, the thumb and index finger is supposed to be the P for power, and the three fingers then that stick up in the air are supposed to be the W for white. And Trump uses this constantly. Now, the question in my mind is, did Trump make that sign with his hand? And I don't know the answer to this. Did Trump make that sign with his hand when he spoke as a matter of course and of routine before he began running for president? Or was it something, you'll recall when he was running for president, the people at Cambridge Analytica, who were being paid by the Mercer billionaires, sat him down and said, "You want to win an election? Talk about building a wall on the southern border." And Trump was like, "Building a wall, that's stupid." And they were like, "No, do it." And go off on immigrants and talk about trade. And I mean, they gave him a list of things. You can Google this. This is common knowledge. I'm wondering if one of the things they said to him is, make this symbol with your hand whenever possible. Replace your normal gestures with this. Or has he always just done the OK symbol, which, is entirely possible. I'm not going all crazy conspiracy theory on this. I just find it fascinating that this woman, who obviously knew what she was doing, continued doing it for the camera. I have no idea why. Is she just some kind of narcissist who wants to draw attention to herself? Or is she trying to promote the message that when she worked with Stephen Miller in the White House, or works with, Stephen Miller, clearly a white supremacist, and the people around him, in charge of the immigration policy, the separating babies from their mothers policy, if they're brown people. You don't do it if they're white people. I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. John in Hillsboro, Oregon. Hey, John, what's up?
Okay, a worst case scenario. You probably already did an autopsy on this concept. What if there's a red tide and not a blue wave, and the Republicans get up, beat their chest, we have political capital, get drunk with power, and start really going after the New Deal and Great Society programs? Then you have the majority.
They're already doing that, John.
Yeah, well, I mean, just this time, just really going for the jugular.
Okay.
How would the American public who don't vote and are very apathetic? You think there would be any kind of insurrection?
What we know from history is that if you want to have a major surge in voters, you need an economic crisis. I don't say that with any glee. It's very depressing, actually. But that's typically in history what has caused it. And if you want voters to be happy or to be complacent, have a good economy, which is what Trump is doing by borrowing $1.5 trillion from you, me, and our grandchildren, giving it to the billionaire class, to the big corporations, but via that route, injecting it into the economy to juice the stock market and the economy overall. And as long as the Republicans continue doing this, jacking up the national debt, this is Jude Wanniski's two Santa Claus theory, right? When a Republican is in office, run the debt up as hard and as fast as you can and try to create a debt crisis so that when a Democrat comes into office, in order to solve that debt crisis, they're going to have to either raise taxes, which is going to hurt them with the public, or cut benefit programs. Specifically, Social Security was the thing that historically they wanted to try to privatize and turn over to the banksters. This is why Pete Peterson created a whole foundation around this, the Wall Street billionaire. And
well, let me put it a different way. What if they do it in such a speedy way that it just overwhelms people? Like, there are a lot of people who are on, EDP, programs and stuff. They go in there and they put out their credit card and they said, nope, it's not valid anymore. You're going to go to churches to get your, soup and bread.
EDP, you mean food stamps? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible, John, and that's why there's so much riding on this election. If the Democrats do not take control of the House of Representatives at the very least, you're going to see these guys newly empowered and going down the road that, in my opinion, that Germany went down, or at least that Italy and Spain went down in the early 1930s when the power of the fascists was cemented. And it concerns me tremendously. And it's why President Obama is hitting the trail. It's why we all need to participate in our democracy. John, thank you for the call. It's kind of a grim thought, but sometimes you've got to look the evil in the face if you're going to do anything about it. John in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hey, John, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Oh, not much. I'm really glad I found your show. The internet has done a great job of connecting people, but it's also done a horrible job of filtering the content out. I live in a part of Tennessee. There are the AM stations, but there's no major alternative to being told you need to drink beer and vote Republican no matter what.
Right.
And you just mentioned Obama hitting the trail. What made me call is that you gave what sounded like a Cliff Notes version of a speech I believe he gave yesterday.
He gave it this morning. Yes.
Oh, this morning?
Yeah.
And
or this morning Pacific time. It would be afternoon Eastern time. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess it probably hasn't even hit the news yet. I believe at one point one of the themes you hit on was, I think it's pretty obvious now that most of Trump's appointees are essentially just robbing the public blind while distracting everybody with, inappropriate and vulgar remarks. And I believe you mentioned that Obama hit on that. And,
yes.
I try to be as rational as anybody can about these sort of things, but I remember what caused me to fall out of Obama's camp was I was out in the street. We were protesting profits over people and how, we can't even get the public option pushed through. And I'm not trying to say that Obama should be shouldered with all the blame for Trump, but I viewed his presidency at a time as being like a critical point for us as a nation, and whether it was health care or immigrants or torture or war, I can't give him high marks on any of those things. And to hear him, at McCain's funeral call for civility and all this stuff and whitewash McCain's record by even showing
John,
up there.
I'm just not going to go down that circular firing squad road. I have no interest in it. Thank you for your call, but you want to call up and pick on Obama, call a different show. Robert in Chicago. Hey, Robert, what's on your mind?
Hey, good afternoon. I think it'd be great if Trump would spend as much time trying to reunite the immigrant children with their parents as he is trying to find out who wrote this op-ed column.
Amen.
And I do believe that he wrote the op-ed column. I think it's a diversion.
He's not that literate.
Well, yeah, but he didn't do it. He had somebody do it. Yeah, obviously he couldn't write it. But I think they got together and said, we need a diversion during the Kavanaugh hearings. And we want to get these immigrants, we want to change the law to hold these kids more than 20 days. So let's do something that everybody will talk about. And that's what's happened. Everybody's talking about it.
I wouldn't put it past him that this is his mini Reichstag fire, that this is his inciting incident to a coup d'etat. I wouldn't put it past him. I don't think it's the case, but I wouldn't be shocked if it turned out to be the case.
And that other call you had about getting the Alaska and the Maine Senate vote, I think if you don't live in their states, I think the only way you can do it is threaten their jobs. And by threatening their jobs, I mean telling them that your tourist money will never go to their states again.
Yeah.
And if their constituents start losing money from that, they'll call them.
Well, it could be. I don't think that Susan Collins is going to be in Maine or Lisa Murkowski in Alaska are going to be freaked out by, somebody in California saying, I'm not going to get on a cruise ship. Or I'm not going to come visit your state. The boycotts generally are not effective. I think that a much stronger case can be made rather than calling up and essentially, making an economic threat. A much stronger case can be made by saying Brett Kavanaugh lied to you in your office when he told you, when he said words that you believed meant that he was going to protect Roe v. Wade. He did not mean that. He said words that were very carefully calibrated to so that you would think that you heard what you wanted to hear, but in fact what he was saying is that he was reserving the right to overturn Roe v. Wade. And that's exactly what was going on, by the way. That's absolutely what's going on. Gloria in Shannon, North Carolina. Hey, Gloria, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing today?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
I wanted to add my opinion to the conversation on the op-ed.
Mm-hmm.
I think the op-ed was written by Ivanka and Jared. They need to get him out of there. They need to save face, because whether anybody realizes it or not, the little money they're making, the money that they're making now, is because of the foolishness in the White House, by him being in the White House and being able to control things.
Yeah.
But when they come out that White House, they still got to make a living. And they were not the most popular people in New York.
No, and Jared is billions of dollars in debt, and Ivanka had to shut down her company because her business partner apparently was a criminal who was associated with Russian oligarchs.
She's also some of her other things that she was doing. She's having to start shutting those down because she's not making the money. And I think they're trying to get him out of there, save face, and so that they will be able to make money after they leave.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, this is the entire Trump family, Gloria. They're grifters. And Ivanka is no different than the rest of them. She just has a prettier face than her dad. But, she's a grifter, too. And Jared is clearly a grifter. His father went to prison for being a grifter. It's, the Trump crime family is a whole bunch of grifters. Gloria, well said. Thank you for the call. Rick in Lexington, Kentucky. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Thanks, Mr. Hartmann, for taking my phone call.
My pleasure.
I was going to say one thing to you, but I have to say this first. In your opinion, do you think
Oh, man, Rick, I missed the cue. Let me put you on hold, and I'll pick you up on the other side of the break, okay?
Okay.
Hang on just a minute. That was entirely my fault. I'm sorry. I should never put somebody on the air with less than a minute to talk. And that was like with 15 seconds. My apologies, Rick. Crazy day today. By the way, President Obama, if you haven't heard, if you're just tuning in, President Obama about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, gave a barn burner of a speech calling out Trump's lies. It was remarkable.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And I'm sure there's pieces of it floating all over the internet. I read some pieces of it to start this hour, so check it out. It's 48 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. That was Rick in Kentucky, right? Okay, Rick in Lexington. My apologies. We're back on the air.
No problem.
Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just want your opinion. The people that support Mr. Trump, I had another question, but since I listened to you, I just thought I'd ask you this. The people that support Mr. Trump, the people that attend these rallies, his genuine supporters, do you think they should be held accountable? Do you think that white society should hold those people accountable for what they're doing to the country and for their support of somebody like him?
Yes and no. I mean, if you look at, this is a very imperfect analogy, but if you look at the Germans, the average Germans, right, after World War II.
Before you give me your answer, can I fill in one more part?
Sure.
Okay, if you say yes and no, do you think...
I'm going to make a case on both sides, but go for it.
Okay, but do you think that progressive Americans should hold those people accountable in the sense that basically, the way I look at it, they have un-American beliefs. Do you feel like that?
I do, and that are inconsistent with the ideals of this country, that are inconsistent with the history of this country, for that matter.
Okay, how do you hold them accountable?
Well, that was my point about after World War II. The average Germans suffered terribly. I mean, there were cholera epidemics. They had a depression that lasted for a decade after World War II. They were just, I mean, it was just a horror Theodore White, wrote a brilliant book. He visited, it was a history book about Germany after the war. My dad gave it to me when I was a kid. And literally, women selling themselves to soldiers for a chocolate bar. It was just a horror show because they had supported Hitler. Nobody came in and said, waved their finger in their face, but they paid the price. And I think that average white middle-class Americans who supported Trump are going to pay a horrible price for this presidency, economically and frankly politically and socially. On the other hand, that's my yes, hold them accountable. I think that it's almost like karma. It's just going to happen. On the other hand, I don't think that you can successfully prosecute them like at Nuremberg.
No, that's way too far. The only thing that I'm interested in is that I've called you before and said this to you, and it drives me crazy listening to the network news. I'm not trying to be racist in any stretch of the imagination. I just want you had some kind of rant a couple of days ago where you hit every point, and I was cheering you across my living room. But you did the same thing. You started off with calling them Americans, then you called them his base, and then you called them anything but white people. And the reason I say that is how do they get held accountable if you don't look into the camera and talk to them?
Yeah, you're right.
On CNN, on your show, on any show, and say white people.
Yeah, you're right, Rick. It's this is what happens when you grow up white for 67 years in this society. Thinking about race is not something that most white people do all the time, and thinking through racial frames is it's part of white privilege. And I need people like you, Rick, periodically to reach out and slap me upside the head and say, hey, wait a minute, you're missing something here, and I appreciate your call. You're absolutely right. The Trump's base is entirely white. Look at any of the crowds and, in his rallies. And it needs to be called out as such. Rick, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll be right back. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. I'm in Los Angeles. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Oh, Professor Hartmann. Brett Kavanaugh has written that the president is above the law while he's president. If the president colluded and conspired with Russians to win the election, he cannot be indicted or even investigated. If our president has been laundering Russian mafia money, which we all know he has, he cannot be indicted or investigated. If he shuts down free speech and jails journalists or even has them executed, he cannot be indicted or investigated, according to Kavanaugh. If he were to shoot and kill someone on Fifth Avenue, he cannot be indicted or investigated while he's...
So what's your point, Jim?
That every senator who votes for Brett Kavanaugh must agree with that.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Yeah. I think that what you're seeing is partisan cowardice, or cowardice motivated by partisan desires on an epic scale. I absolutely agree. Jim, thank you. Very, very well said. James in Spokane, Washington. Hey, James, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Namyo Rengekyo for the month. Look, I had
back at you, James.
A comment and a small question for you. The comment is these conservatives are not at all conservative, as you and I know. The only thing they're about conserving is the status quo.
Well, yes and no, James. The word conservative prior to 1980 meant basically in favor of progress, but slow, careful, cautious progress. That was what conservatives were all about. That was my dad's generation of conservatives. That was Dwight Eisenhower conservatives. In 1980, Ronald Reagan changed the meaning of the word, and conservative became, a conservative now is somebody who is supportive of the billionaire class, of corporate, what corporations want, and who believes that average working people should have no political or economic power. That's what conservatives mean. That's what conservative means today. So in that context, these people are all conservatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're about conserving the status quo, maintaining their wealth and their power.
That's correct.
That's the extent of it today. The question I have for you is, what do you think the effects are going to be of so many of us human beings drinking sterile water all of our lives? We didn't evolve with sterile water. We didn't evolve with dead water.
Oh, okay. I remember years ago when I was super into nutrition, some theories that if you drank water that didn't have minerals in it, it would demineralize your body. I honestly don't know if that's the case. I'm skeptical of it, frankly. But you want to get minerals, the best way to get them is to eat a lot of plant-based food, because that's where the minerals are, especially if it's organic. Thanks so much for being with us today. My apologies to the folks I didn't get to on the calls. We'll be back on Monday. And in the meantime, have a great and blessed weekend. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. Please get out there, get active, tag you're it. We'll see you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From UN headquarters.